Hello, this is Lee Hamilton. Today I'm going to be talking about the GeoMax Zipp 10R Pro. This video is designed to give you just a slight rundown of the instrument itself. We will not be covering capabilities, but I will walk through the menu, and I want to show you the steps through the menus, what the different buttons do, how the menus progress, so you can get familiar with this instrument and how it works. In future videos, I'll be moving much faster on how to do specific functions. So this video will be slower so that you can see these menus and the buttons being pushed a little better. The controls, while this is booting up, this is your vertical control for your zenith here. This outer ring here is a lock. Allows you to move it this way. Once you lock it down, it won't move. When it is locked down, then this is the fine tune. When you're looking through the scope, you can see your crosshairs move up and down with this fine tune. Over here on the side is your horizontal. Again, you have the outer ring that locks the instrument for turning left and right. Now it will no longer turn. And then you have also the inner ring, which is the fine tune. That fine tuner you'll see once you're looking through the scope itself. When you boot it up, you will get your tilt, as other instruments call it. Here it's called a level and plummet. I've taken the liberty to go ahead and level this up, but I want to note a couple of things here. One is that you've got your x-axis and your y-axis. Inside the settings, which we'll cover in a few minutes, you'll have the option of 2-axis, 1-axis, or no axis. So that's the axis it's talking about. X and Y right here. That's your forward and back and your left and right. X is your left and right. Y is your forward and back. This icon right here, that is your Plummet laser power setting. So if you look down here, you'll see I got a small laser right now looking on the ground, which you can't even see it. So to turn up this indicator, you're going to use this pad here. Just pushing the up button, turning it up all the way. Here you can see how much brighter it is on my hand. And now you can see it on the ground. Well, you could there for a second, but so the idea there is, depending on your lighting setting, in the setting that you're in, how bright do you need it? That's how you control that, up and down right here on the D-pad or the circle pad. Once you've got this level and you got it set where you want your plumb up over your point, which I don't have a point here for this demonstration, you hit OK, and then you go into the menu. Now here inside the menu, it starts out in the quick survey screen, which I'll be referring to as the root screen, because when you escape all the way out, you end up here on this screen. You know what, I'm going to turn on the light, F2, there we go, that's much better. So up here you have the prism indicator. This is the type of laser, or the type of prism it's expecting. In this case it's reflectorless. When you set up your prisms, you'll have the option to choose if it's a mini prism, a big round prism, a custom prism, a 360 prism. This is the symbol for custom prism because they do not have my offset in their predetermined prism types. So I have to choose a custom to get my offset correct. We'll talk about that in a few minutes too. This is your tilt. It's showing here that my tilt is good and acceptable within range. This is your face icon. You can shoot your theodolite or total station, whatever you want to call it, in multiple faces. When you're looking at this screen and you're looking through the eyepiece, everything is facing forward. This is a front face, or a face 1. Now if you rotate this around 180 degrees, you rotate this around 180 degrees, and you sight your target again, this is face 2, or reverse face. If you're used to some of the older Topcon equipment, it's called a reverse face. So you'll have up here either a 1 or a 2, depending on which way you're facing. On this instrument, it's pretty easy to determine which face you are because there's only a screen on one side. Next to it, you have your battery indicator. Right now it's showing full. Those little lines will disappear as you deplete the battery. The menu type will always be right here, or the survey type, what window you're in. It'll be pretty clear as you progress through the menus that you're in set out, which is really stakeout, or surveying or quick survey. So down here you've got a few buttons. You can hit the P1, P2 button. That flips between pages of the menu. Now sometimes this P page button will also flip through data that's on the screen. So just kind of keep that in mind. HZ, that is horizontal azimuth. Okay, now that's tricky for this gun. That's going to be tricky for us out in the field because we're used to setting our 0 as a circle 0. Set our circle to 0 is what we're used to doing. But this gun only works on azimuth like the old brass and glass telescopic instruments that we had in the past, where it had an azimuth dial on the bottom, and as you turned, you set azimuth to true north. That was the only thing you set azimuth to, and as you turned, you marked all the angles. You measured the distance with the steel tape or the chains, and then someone sat under a tree for a while and did the math. So it's the old way to record your angles, but you need to understand that this instrument does not set typical circle 0 like we're used to doing with other instruments in surveying today. So when you shoot a point and then you move up to it and you sight your backside, you're not going to set the 0. If you do, your points are going to be thrown all over the place every time you change your setup. Because this 0, the only 0 this gun will do will be true north. It's azimuth 0. I'm sorry, not true north, but azimuth north. So this is saying azimuth 0. Now there is another screen where you'll see HA for horizontal angle equals 0. When you set that, it's doing the same thing, setting true north. So don't be confused by that, even though that's the correct circle 0 that we're used to setting. It's still true north, and you can play around with that on a test survey and find out that that's true. Alright, so if you hit HZ now, it'll tell you if you want to set your angle. It'll be good to start. Sorry about that, I got distracted. Then you'll be good to start with that angle as your back sight. You hit OK, you'll see it becomes your angle. Right there in the screen. Alright, so as I page down, your compensator, that's the X and Y axis we were talking about. So you can choose 2, 1, or off. You can choose that in your settings too. This is your remeasure angle. This is all for quick survey. Vertical, you can switch between percentage or angles. In your settings, you'll also have another option where you can make it actual zenith, which is plumb above the point, in case you don't know, or vertical angle. Starting 0 is 90 degrees from plumb. R and L, that's your right and left. So if you want to record your angle from your backside, you're turning your gun to the right and recording your angle that way, that's R. If you're turning your gun, you want it to start recording by turning left, then you would choose left. You see how it's changing here? It'll show you right here too. Horizontal left, horizontal right. Vertical angle. Here's that other option there. So this is the different options you have here. This is from Zenith. This is what I like to use because Zenith is always going to be plumb from your point. This divides that 180 degree plumb line in half with 90 degrees out from your instrument height. 90 degrees out, that's 0, and then up is positive and down is negative. So you can see if I turn this down, see how it goes into the negative. So 0 would be exactly 90 degrees. Now that's useful if you're in construction and working on staking out some stuff. So I'll stick that back there. Okay, so that's the quick survey screen. My personal uses for this gun. I haven't used this screen very much at all, if any. So I want to take you into the settings first, because one of the first things we want to do when we get this gun is set it up correctly, set it up to your preferences. So if you go over here to menu, you can get to settings in two ways, but this way shows you the full menu. Now up here you'll see you're in the main menu, you're on page 1 of 2. These F choices here correspond down here to these big buttons. I like to use the big buttons most of the time because my hands are big, but there are times where I will use the numbers. Pay attention to these numbers on the right. They correspond to the pad up here, but when you go to page 2, by paging down here, you'll see that these numbers also increase, whereas these F numbers repeat because they're only corresponding. This whole menu actually has 8 items, 2 pages, and so there's only 4 F buttons. That's why it does that. So if you memorize this menu, you know settings is number 5. You're starting from the root screen and you hit menu, you can just hit 5 right here. You don't have to page to that second page. That's why you have these numbers. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we're in settings. You got 3 main system settings here, and we'll go over each one. The first one is general, so we'll choose F1 here. Contrast, that's the contrast of this screen that you're looking at right here. You can make it darker. Whoops. You have to select it, or just go left and right. So you can make it darker or lighter, depending on your preference. Your tilt correction, you can adjust it here. This is your default, so every time you boot up, this is what will boot up. Now you can change that at any point. We already saw that, but when it boots up, this is whatever you have here is what's going to happen. The beep feature, if you like to be annoyed, you can turn that on. Whoops, I gotta scroll down here. Turn it on to normal. Then you can select your beep. The select beep is as I'm pressing buttons. That's the select beep. This gun will still beep on 0 when you reach azimuth 0. So we'll talk about that in the survey menu. Now I'm going to page down. We see we have 2 of 4 now. This is my angle units. So I like degrees, minutes, and seconds. There are a few options here. It's pretty standard here in United States. I've worked in a couple different states in land surveying, but I'm in Texas at this point, so we use degrees, minutes, seconds for our angles. We like to be precise, so we'll go to 1 minute. I'm sorry, 1 second, and you can choose all the way up to 10 seconds for your minute read. But we're a little more precise at this company, or at least I like to be. The displayed units are in feet, US feet, not survey feet. International feet. Feet, inches, meters. So there are different options here. The display, that's just basically the light in the background. You'll see that turn off. Alright, let's go down to page 3, which is here. Alright, horizontal correction. I'm not sure exactly what it's doing inside as far as the math or the how it's diagnosing it needs to be correct, but there's 2 corrections as stated in the manual. It is recommended in the manual to leave both of them on. So I have, but I haven't really done a lot of field tests to figure out, is it detrimental to turn that off. So I just left it on for this at this point. Horizontal angle is to the right. We talked about that a second ago. Here's another option. This of course is your boot up, so this will be your default. Vertical angle, I got it set to zenith. We talked about the horizon, that's the 0. When you set it to 0 at 90 degrees off your plumb. And slow percentage is the other name. Auto off, I prefer to turn my gun off when I want to because I don't like the boot time. So I disable this, but basically if you enable it, it's going to turn off after a certain amount of time. So let me go back there and disable that. And then down to page 4, temperature units, Fahrenheit or Celsius. Okay, again, that just goes back to where we live. Millibars, for our pressure units, it will read that automatically inside here, but you just need to tell it what units you want to use. And so all the standard measurements are in here, but we use millibars here. Data confirmation, that's what this stands for here, this next one. That should be on in the beginning until you get used to it, I think. And then you can come in here and you can turn it off. What data confirmation is going to do is after you take your shot, it's going to give you an option to review the coordinate data. That's it. So you're going to see the northing, easting, and the elevation as a coordinate. And you won't even see the code or the point number. Actually, I think you can see the point number. And then so you just have the option to say yes or no. So after a while, once I got used to the gun, I used it just to understand that yes, I've taken the shot and it's ready to store that shot. You hit yes and it stores. So at this point I have it turned off. Startup. Okay, so in the stakeout and on quick survey, when you start up, you're going to look at angles instead of distance. On the stakeout menu, you're going to see the option over here on the left to view the angle immediately. If you change this, you can view the distance immediately. I like to turn my angles first, and we'll talk about that on another video on staking out. But anyway, horizontal angle is generally what we're going to look at first, so I just leave it there. Your deflection again. Oh, I'm sorry, this is defaults. It's funny because they use the same abbreviation for different words sometimes, but you'll get used to that. So this is defaults. If you ever want to change this back to the way it was at the factory, just hit defaults and all of this stuff will change, and you'll have to come back in and change it again. When you're done, you're ready to save it. You can flip through all these pages and make changes and then hit OK at the end. You don't have to hit OK as you adjust page 1. You don't have to hit OK in order to go to page 2. You can adjust all of them and then hit OK, and you'll see it'll say data stored. Okay, that's the general setup of this total station. Next is your EDM. That stands for electronic digital measurement, and basically that's your prism setup. So your mode is the type that your laser is going to be looking for. This is non-prism standard, non-prism constant. That means that it's just going to continually shoot this laser, and it's going to be returning a result. Alright, so that's what constant is. Foil, I don't know if you've ever seen these or not, but basically you can buy these foil pieces that have adhesive on the back, a light adhesive. You can buy them at different degrees. They have a special face on them that's reflective to a certain degree, and you can stick them on walls or other points that you're monitoring or that you're using. It's not a long-term use, but for years. It's not like a nail or a rod you're going to put in the ground for control, but you can use it for control for certain things. There have been times where I've had to monitor a wall. When I was surveying out in Atlanta, Georgia, we had a wall of a building that they were concerned was leaning and over time, so we put these foil marks on them, and you can get them in different sizes, but basically we would set up there once a week and we would monitor those same points on that wall and see if it was moving. It was, by the way. So anyway, that's what the foil is. This is prism standard, prism quick, and prism constant. Again, that means it's going to be shooting that laser repetitively until you change the prism type. So next, once you choose the prism type, you have all these different prisms you need to set up actually for whichever ones you use. I use prism and non-prism basically, and I've got two offsets, 0 and -30. So it makes it a little easy for me. So my non-prism standard, it can be none actually, the type of prism, because it's a non-prism, but you basically have none or custom for non-prism. Then the constant is 0. When you choose none, it's going to be 0 regardless, but if you choose custom, then you can go in here and you can change the the depth. There was a time where I shot straight on because it was elevated to my height. I shot a pin, and I shot the face of that pin, and it was a 1/2 inch pin, so half of a 1/2 inch is 1/4 inch, which equaled out to be 6 millimeters. So I was able to go in here and say it's a 6 millimeter non-prism, hit enter, and then from there I shot that pin, and it shot the center of the pin based on that. It shot the face, but then it calculated to the center. So that's what that is. Laser. This is the viewpoint of the laser. Sorry, you got to hit enter to accept the change. Laser is going to be the laser that you can see right here on your hand. You can't see that laser at this point. When it's taking the shot, you'll be able to see that laser. If you're looking, I don't recommend you do that. You will burn your cornea. But laser, you can have that laser always on for this prism setting if that's your preference. And I actually probably should have this on because when I'm in non-prism mode, I'm using that laser more than not. I will say that about this gun. The laser, the spot laser, is super bright. You can see it when the sun is out here in Texas. That's pretty handy. So anyway, you can just turn that off and on for this setting, non-prism standard. So then you can just hit OK there. We'll go back into EDM. Non-prism constant. I seldom use this. I will say this, I did discover one time that the EDM that you leave this on is going to be the one that when you're surveying and you have the option to change your EDM, it's going to flip to that one. So one time I had it on constant and I didn't realize that, and then so when I switched to non-prism, I kept getting a returned value every time, even while I was turning the gun, and I was really confused there for a minute before I realized it was on non-prism constant. So it doesn't show you that real clearly, but if you experience something like that, look here and see if you're wanting it to be constant or if you just want it to be a standard shot, like a single shot there. So when you leave this screen, you hit OK. What you're on right here matters. Okay, so that's the standard foil. Okay, prism standard. When you flip through here, you got a regular round. That's the full size round. You know, it's about this big. I couldn't tell you what the size is. And then you have the mini. That's the little peanuts like this, often referred to as a peanut. Mine offsets aren't these constants, so I'm not sure where those numbers come from. Mini JP, a 360. You've seen those with robotic instruments. And there's a 360 mini. So mine is actually a custom. So I'll show you this. When you go in here, you cannot go down here and change that value. So even though you might be using a big round, I can't go down there and change it to a -30. So I have to go up here to a custom, and then I can go down here and say, okay, my offset is 30 negative. And then you can hit enter. Again, down here, do you want your laser to be on when you choose this prism type in your survey prism menu? No, I don't, because I don't like to be blind. So prism standard, prism quick, it's another option to go through. It's basically, prism standard is going to take several shots and average those. A prism quick is probably going to take one. I haven't looked specifically in the manual, but it takes less shots. It comes up with the value faster, but it may not be as accurate. So I mean, if you're in wide open spaces, there's no reason why you wouldn't use a P-Quick. Prism constant, again, we talked about that. It's just constantly returning the values over and over and over. And basically, I've set these all to be the same. Once you get them all set, just remember which one you end on. I use prism standard, and then I hit OK, and it's going to store that. Okay, the next one is system info. You can go here, F3. This just shows you the type of instrument. This is a 5-second. This also comes in a 2-second, I believe, but this is the 5-second. You got a software version over here. If you need to look, they do release on their website other versions that you can upload. These are some menu items that are they're actually called applications or apps. They're in this gun working right now. So we can hit back, set your date. Now when you save your job or you export your points, it's going to hard write that file onto your data stick or your USB drive, and it's going to date it, and it's going to put the time based on the values you have in the gun. Now if you ever want to sort your data to find that file quickly, which is very useful, I recommend that you do that to find your files. It's very simple. You just hit up on the view menu, you just hit sort by last modified, and the file you just exported will be on the top. But in order for that to work, these values have to be correct. You can scroll up here to the top and you can change the format: month, day, year, year, month, day, day, month, year. This is a kind of a European standard. This is pretty much what we use here in America, and you'll see this in a lot of computer coding world. So let's see, month, day, year, 10/28 happens to be today. So I'm gonna hit OK. Oh, let me show you how to edit that. So yeah, when you're on here, you just basically type it in, and see it flips through. 2016. You can clear the whole thing. You can delete it. You can insert halfway through. 10/28 2016. Enter. Okay. Then your time is here. 24-hour time or 12-hour time. I prefer 24-hour time. There's no confusion when I use that. Here is where you'll type that in just the same. I'm not going to type it in because I got my seconds already set. I timed that with a clock, so I'm just going to keep that. But basically it's the same way you start typing. It's going to start in the hours, go to minutes, and then go to seconds. We hit OK. Alright, and once we have that set, we can go back, or you can hit escape right here. So we're going to go back, and now we've gone through all the general settings. So now we'll hit escape. Now we're back to the main menu. From here, let me escape all the way back out to the root. This is where we were. This is the first thing we talked about. You can see now my prism changed. If you remember earlier, it was the non-prism symbol. Now it's the prism symbol. I still have the custom icon next to it. Next we'll go back into the menu. These are your general apps. Data collect, that's you actually starting to survey. You're taking measurements, you're recording angles and distances with a code name and a point number. This is data collect. Set out, that actually means stake out. So when you're out staking pens or doing some construction staking, this is what you're going to use, stake out, or set out, sorry. Apps, that's what we were talking about a second ago. You saw that menu in the software version. It showed you that they were all installed. Missing line, resection, excuse me, area and volume, remote elevation, and road stakeout. Now I recommend, if you're using those things, that you reference the manual on how to work some of those. I'm not going to cover those, except maybe the resection. That's used pretty often. I use it pretty often. It's extremely handy to be able to use, and I'll cover that in another video. So those are the apps. Data manager, this is where you're going to view your data. You can view it at any point. You cannot modify a point that you have observed. So meaning the difference is you can type in a point, you can import a point from your data stick, and you can observe a point. And the points that you observe, you cannot edit in any way. You can only delete them. So you can delete your points, your last point that you shot. You can do that pretty easily. Or you can come in here to Data Manager and you can delete a point specifically. You can't edit. You can't edit codes, can't edit rod heights, anything like that. So keep that in mind. If you mess up, you can make a note in your book if your drafting team has the ability to edit that stuff for you, or you're going to have to delete it and go in and make the edits too. You just got to kind of choose what's going to be the better option between all of it, you know, to cause the less damage basically. So that's data manager. And then we go back to settings, calibration. We covered settings a minute ago. We just went through that menu. Calibration, if you're going to calibrate the instrument, I recommend you read the manual first. Data transfer, that's where you're going to export points or import points. Next is upload firmware. That's F4 down here. That's when we were talking about the website does release updates. This is where you're going to do that from. You'll have to insert a USB stick here, and then go back to this. Alright, so let's go to the data manager. So back to the root, back to the menu, and then data manager, F4. First thing it wants you to do is choose what job you're going to manage points with. You know, if you're already surveying, you don't have to modify this job at all. But just so you know what it looks like, if you choose job, you have the option here with job numbers. Basically, you've got 10 digits to work with here. 8, 9, 10. So you have 10 place values, so if your job number is longer than that, you won't see the whole thing. However, you do have date and time down below to help you, and you can scroll back and forth here. You can see I have 13 entries and I'm on number 6. So if I scroll over, you'll see the numbers changing. You see this user, that's me, and basically you can put in, if you have a team name or a username, when you're creating a job, you have the option to choose the user. You might have a numeric code or a word or a name, or you can just leave it blank. I'm the only one who uses his gun, so it really doesn't matter for me in this point. Okay, so in the data manager, that's the job. Now it wants to know, what do you want to look at, known points or observations? And again, we talked about that. Known points are either points that you typed in physically into the gun or that you imported from the data stick. Those are known points. Observations are things that you turned an angle on the gun and you shot it with the laser, or you turned an angle and stored it with a distance manually. You know, there are different ways you can observe a point with this gun, but if you created the point from measurements taken by the gun, that's an observation point. Alright, code library. That is where you can actually go in here and set up codes. Now you can import these codes, or you can physically type them in. If you're using a lot of different codes, I recommend that you import them, and there's a structure outline inside the manual. But in other words, if you'll have like a centerline road, you'll have back of curb, you can code all of those things in there. You can code in tree, you can code in culvert, building corner, so on and so forth. There's so many options, right? So many different codes and attributes with those codes. That's where this is. Now as you take shots and you're working, you have a choice to choose the code from the code library, and this is where you find that code library inside the data manager. Alright, that just about covers it. The second page here, you can erase memory. Now you can erase memory from the job, or you can erase memory from the entire unit. That's basically the two options. And then you have memory info. That's going to tell you information about each job. So here we go. These different jobs, you can see that my stations, known points, and measurements recorded are all listed here. If you scroll down, occupied memory, it's basically nothing of the memory of the gun. I don't have the specs with me, but I'll list a page, or a link to the page that shows you the specs of the gun. So you can see how that works. It's memory info of each file. Okay, so that's data manager inside the main menu, which you find right up here. Next, when you're surveying, you have the function menu right here. So you have this menu, and then you have the function menu. Now you can only access the function menu when you're working. So whether you're using quick survey, or if you go to menu and you're data collecting. Now when you start data collection, we didn't talk about this, but you have to do the top 3 and then you can go to the 4th one. But we're just going to go ahead and hit go and pretend that we did the top 3. Now it says right here at the top that I'm surveying. So now I can hit this function menu. But basically, I'm going to go back to the root and show you, but that's what I mean by you have to be working. You have to be in a section where you can collect data and record it in order to hit this function button. We'll skate back out to the root. Now I'm in quick survey, and then I'm going to hit function. Alright, so now I can go back to my level in Plummet, just like the one that's booted up, the one that shows up when you boot up. The illumination, you can turn that on and off. Your data confirmation, you can turn that on and off. And your delete last observation is right here. That's what I was talking about earlier. You can delete the last point you just took, and you can do it with 2 buttons, right? So you can hit function, F4, well 3, and then you have to hit yes. Let's page down to page 2. Laser beam, that's the one that comes out of the front. You know, if I turn that on and then look at my hand, why don't I do that? F1, laser beam is on. You can see it right there on my hand. So, then you have to hit function, page down, laser beam to turn it off. The sun's moving on me, so it's catching the screen, but let's go back to the function. Page 2, there's the settings. That's a quick settings menu. This is your prism, non-prism change. This is how you change between those two. Now you remember I told you what you leave it set on is what you're going to change back and forth to. It will not tell you when you change back and forth. It's just going to tell you, hey, you changed to non-prism mode. That's it. You cannot tell by the icons if it's repeating or not. You'll just tell by the data. Function, we'll go back. We'll turn that back to prism mode. And then the last one is compensator. That's your axis, 2, 1, and off. Okay? This is the function menu here. Now, from the quick menu, you can start, we're back at the root, quick survey. You can start measuring angles, or offsets, or by coordinates. So here's coordinates. And then once you're here, you can choose prism, non-prism right on the menu. Your offset, you can do an angle offset or a distance offset. I will tell you this about the offset menu. It's going to store 2 points. So normally when you do an angle offset, you shoot the prism for a distance and then you turn the gun to the center of the object for the angle. Your second shot will be both of those together. Your first shot will be the distance, and it stores both of them in the data collector, so inside the gun here. So when you export those points, or if you're writing your points down on a sheet, you need to make sure you're understanding that you're writing 2 points. The first one only supports the second one. The second one is both of your shots. The same thing happens with distance offset. The only thing with distance is that you're choosing to type in how far away from the gun and how far left and right, you know, and your height, your elevation difference, if you're offsetting your elevation. So this is the only time that happens. Are you sure you want to exit? It's only on the offset menu, so not sure about that either. But measure means that it's going to shoot the laser. I don't have a prism out there, so without being on prismless, it's going to say, hey, it's impossible, weak signal, the air turbulence is interfering. Okay, if you know, leave it in your comments. It's your height, your rod height, height of instrument, station. In the quick survey, if you want to set this up real quick, which you probably should, you can do that. You can measure, you can change your measurement between meters and feet, and then physically go in here to your EDM menu. This is the full EDM menu we talked about earlier, so you can access that way too. So let's go back over here. That's these buttons here. It came unlocked. So that's these buttons here. This one shows your horizontal distance. If I were to take a measurement, if I hit this measure button, it'll shoot the laser, and my vertical distance from where I am. You can again change meter to feet. Okay, this is a stakeout menu. You can enter a bearing and a distance and physically stake that out quickly from the quick survey. EDM again, same as with the last screen. And then your angles here. This is where you boot up in your root, which we covered all those too. All right, and so that's all of the buttons on here. And I don't know if I covered them by looking at each one, but basically you have symbols here. You have on the top layer you have numbers, decimal, plus and minus. But then if you also have the symbols and the alphabet. So there are times where right here you'll see alpha or NUM number, and that refers to, if it says number, then you're only hitting the top values of these keys, what you're seeing on top of the button. for instance, the 0, not these symbols. That would be when numeric is chosen. When it says alpha, you start with the letters, and then the last one will be the number. So if it is alpha, you choose 7 the first time, it'll say A. If you choose it twice, it'll say B, so on and so forth. This is your D-pad. It allows you to scroll around different options. Your escape button and your enter button. You're going to use these two buttons a lot, so keep that in mind. They are reversed from other instruments. Usually you'll have the enter button on the far right, but in this case you don't. So that'll take some getting used to. Power button. When you're done for the day, just hold it down until this menu comes up, and it just says, hey, are you actually wanting to shut down? You just tell it yes or no. I hope this video is helpful. I do want to point out a couple of things. Inside here, I don't know if you can see it, but you have crosshairs. There we go. Not pointers. So you actually have crosshairs on top and bottom. Here, this outer ring focuses your main optics. This inner ring here focuses your crosshair in the optics. So that is for looking through the scope. If you're looking for the battery, when you're looking at the screen, it's to the right, and you have to pinch both of these together to remove the battery. It's a standard Leica battery. It lasts pretty good. I've never depleted this yet, working a full day. Or I should say I haven't depleted it yet. You just click it in just like that, charges up pretty quickly, fits into the charger nicely. On top you have a spirit level, which mine doesn't match my internal tilt level. Down below on the tri-brack here you have another level, and I think this is a 15-second level. The interior is a 5-second, and this here is probably a 1 or 2 second. Actually, it says on it that it's a 30-second, which might be why it's out so much. So that's pretty much everything. Tri-brack comes with it. It is a little wider, so if you have one of the thin top pair of legs, it's probably going to push to the edge or stick over the edge. Keep that in mind. It doesn't give you a lot of room to move it around, so luckily that laser pointer with changing the brightness makes it really easy to set up over the point. It does, once you unlock it, spin pretty freely. So hope this video is helpful. If you did find it helpful, please like it and leave plenty of comments. I will leave a link to the data sheet with the specs of this particular instrument and anything else I find useful about this instrument.